whole state of Maine would know what had gone on here. Kenty, whose own life offered little in the way of excitement, might as well have the ghoulish thrill. Ellie came up behind me. "He says stay right here. Don't do anything or touch anything," she said, and I heard the irony in her voice, mingled with grief over Faye Anne. "You mean we're not supposed to barge in, put our handprints into all that... Or make footprints," Ellie agreed. Bob sometimes tended to state the obvious. "Poor Faye Anne. We should have done more." The smell was of meat cooking, mingled with the sour reek of scorched fabric. The last of the previous evening's fire still sulked in the wood stove, and the room was warm. I opened the stove door. There was an old potholder tied to the iron handle, so it wouldn't have held fingerprints anyway. Not that I thought anyone would be checking for any. Inside, rags, partially burned. There was enough fabric left to see what they were stained with. Sickened, I turned away. Winter sunshine slanted mercilessly between the white eyelet lace panels Faye Anne had hung at the kitchen windows. Or they'd been white when she hung them there. A few small clay pots of herbs stood on the windowsill, cuttings, I supposed, out of Faye Anne's herb collection, from her homemade greenhouse. The first time I'd seen it, I'd made fun of the slammed-together 2x4s, bent nails, and flappingly overlapping plastic sheets that formed the slanting side. Not to her face, of course, but still. Later I learned better. Inside that slapdash structure, Faye Anne had grown a paradise of exotic plant varieties, heirloom flowers, and antique pharmaceutical herbs. A shy, softly passive woman with moist brown eyes, pale, often bruised skin, and a breathy little voice that rarely rose above a tentative murmur. She'd been a self-taught expert in a kind of horticulture most people don't even know exists. The indoor growing of useful, not merely ornamental, botanical specimens. What would happen to Faye Anne's collection of greenery now? With the thought, and as a distant siren came from outside, I realized how perilously close to weeping I was, and gritted my teeth. "Jacobia," Ellie began steadyingly. For our visit to Faye Anne's that morning, Ellie had put on a bright purple turtleneck and an orange cardigan sweater she had knitted herself. And because Ellie's knitting is long on creative charm, but short on the precise measurements needed to make hems end where they ought to, she was wearing it as a tunic. With it, she had on magenta-ribbed leggings, thick wool socks, and hiking boots tied with green and purple plaid laces. A yellow ribbon of some sparkly, gauzy stuff held back her red hair. All of which should have made her look like an explosion at the thrift store's used clothing bin. But Ellie is so tall and slender that she could wear the bin itself and look ready for a stroll down a fashion runway. Now her pale green eyes assessed me gravely through her new glasses, their lenses magnifying the tiny flecks of amber in her eye color. "How are they?" I asked irrelevantly. The glasses, I meant. Anything to stop looking at what was all over the walls and floor, to stop conjuring with such hideous precision, complete with sound effects, of where it had come from and how. Ellie touched the frames, heavy tortoiseshell that set off her hair. Below them, the freckles across her nose were like a sprinkling of gold dust. "All right, I guess. I'm still getting used to them." Ellie was so far-sighted that she could spot the nostril in a sparrow's beak at 200 yards, but without her glasses, anything much nearer was just a blob to her. "What I want to know is how You," she would have finished. Ellie had been my friend since nearly the moment I'd arrived in Eastport 4 years earlier. But just then we heard it, through the howl of Bob Arnold's approaching squad car siren. The sound, like a muffled half-sob, of a person waking in pain. The heap of quilts on the daybed shifted and sat up. It was Faye Anne Carmody. Frowning and blinking in the bright, warm sunlight of her own blood-splattered kitchen, she peered fretfully at us. Her eyes seemed to focus partway. An uncertain smile twitched her slackened mouth. "Oh," she breathed, swaying a little. Then the quilt fell, exposing the apron she wore, a bibbed canvas butcher's apron, and her hands encased in yellow rubber gloves.